The alarm bells rang loud and clear across the giant space station. Red lights flashed in every hallway and room. Alien beings from all over the galaxy ran through the corridors with fear in their eyes. Something terrible was happening, and everyone knew it. The Galactic Council's meeting room was packed with representatives from dozens of different worlds. The room was huge, with seats arranged in circles that went up to the ceiling. Each species had their own special area with air and gravity that matched their home planets. Ambassador Krell stood at the center of the room. He was a Zephyrian, which meant he had 6 arms and blue skin that sparkled like stars. His voice boomed across the chamber as he spoke to the crowd. "My fellow beings," Krell said, his 6 hands moving as he talked. "We face the worst crisis our galaxy has ever seen. The void dragons have awakened." A wave of frightened whispers filled the room. Even the bravest warriors from the strongest planets looked scared. The dragons were not just stories told to children. They were real, and they were hungry. On the giant screen behind Krell, images appeared that made everyone gasp. The dragons were massive beyond belief. Each one was as big as a small moon, with scales that shined like black diamonds. Their wings spread so wide they could cover entire cities. Their eyes burned like tiny suns, and their teeth were sharp enough to cut through the strongest metals in the universe. For 3,000 years, these creatures slept in the dark spaces between stars, Krell continued. Now they have woken up, and they are eating everything in their path. The screen showed the destruction the dragons had caused. Whole space. Stations were gone, leaving only empty space behind. Planets that once had millions of people living on them were now just floating rocks. The dragons had eaten everything, the buildings, the people, even the air itself. Commander Voss, a tall Zephyrian with scars across his face, stepped forward. "We have tried everything," he said. "Our most powerful weapons cannot even scratch their scales. Our energy blasters pass right through them like they are made of air. 4 of our colonies are gone. Millions of our people are dead." The Nexari representative, a being that looked like it was made of living metal, spoke next. "Our quantum disruptors? Do nothing to them. Our reality-bending weapons cannot touch them. These creatures exist in a way we do not understand." From the floating platform where the ethereal communion sat, a voice spoke directly into everyone's minds. "We cannot read their thoughts. Their minds are closed to us. They think in ways that are alien even to us." The room fell silent. These were the most powerful species in the galaxy, and they were all helpless against the dragons. In the back of the room, almost hidden behind a group of tall, tree-like beings, sat a human. His name was Jake Morrison, and he looked very ordinary compared to all the aliens around him. He was in his 40s, with brown hair and kind eyes. He wore the simple blue uniform of a cargo pilot. Jake had been delivering supplies to a mining station when the crisis began. He was the only human in this part of the galaxy, so the council had asked him to represent his species. Most of the other beings barely noticed he was there. While the aliens argued about military solutions, Jake watched the videos of the dragons on his small tablet. He studied how they moved, how they ate, and where they went. Something about their behavior seemed familiar to him, but he could not quite figure out what it was. "We must attack them with everything we have," shouted General Torx, a being that looked like a giant insect. "We will gather every ship from every world and destroy them before they eat the entire galaxy." "That is madness," replied the Nexari. "Representative, we have already lost thousands of ships. They grow stronger with each battle." "Then what do you suggest?" Krell asked. "Should we just wait for them to eat us all?" The arguing got louder and louder. Plans were made and rejected. Some wanted to abandon entire star systems. Others wanted to build massive barriers to keep the dragons away. A few suggested trying to put the dragons back to sleep. Somehow, Jake listened to all of this while continuing to study the dragon footage. He noticed something that the others had missed. The dragons did not just eat everything they found. They would grab something, taste it, and then either eat it completely or throw it away with what looked like disgust. "They are searching for something," Jake said quietly to himself. The alien next to him, a small purple creature with big eyes, heard him speak. "Did you say something, human?" "Oh, sorry," Jake said. "I was just thinking out loud," but Jake's mind was working fast now. He had grown up on a farm on Earth, and he knew how animals behaved when they were hungry. These dragons were acting just like his father's pigs when they were looking for a specific type of food. The arguing in the council continued. Some aliens wanted to evacuate entire sectors of space. Others wanted to try to communicate with the dragons. A few suggested that maybe the dragons were not really alive at all, but some kind of natural disaster that looked like living creatures. Jake stood up from his seat. His legs felt shaky, but he knew he had to speak. "Excuse me," he said in a voice that was barely louder than a whisper. Nobody heard him over the shouting. "Excuse me," Jake said again, a little louder this time. A few aliens turned to look at him, but most kept arguing. Finally, Jake took a deep breath and shouted as loud as he could, "Has anyone tried just feeding them?" The entire room went quiet. Thousands of alien eyes turned to look at the small human standing in the back of the room. The silence was so complete that Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Ambassador. Krell's multiple eyes narrowed as he looked at Jake. "Feed them?" he said slowly. "Human, they are already feeding. They are eating everything they find?" Jake felt his face turn red, but he kept talking. "No, I mean really feeding them. Like giving them what they actually want to eat." A few aliens laughed, others looked confused. Commander Voss shook his head. "Human, these are not pets. They are forces of destruction older than most of our civilizations." But Jake had seen something in those videos that gave him an idea. The dragons were not just eating randomly, they were looking for something specific. And maybe, just maybe, he knew how to help them find it. The laughter in the council chamber was not kind. Most of the aliens thought Jake's idea was silly. How could a simple human cargo pilot understand something that the smartest beings in the galaxy could not figure out? "Feed the dragons, Ambassador?" Krell repeated, shaking his head. "This is what humans think will solve our crisis. Give treats to the monsters that are eating our worlds?" But Jake did not give up. He knew he was right about something, even if he could not explain it properly. "Yet, please, just listen to me for a minute," he said. "I know this sounds crazy, but I think these dragons are not trying to destroy everything. I think they are just really, really hungry." General Voss stepped forward, his 6 arms crossed over his chest. "Human, you clearly do not understand what we are dealing with. These creatures have destroyed 4 star systems in 1 week. They are not hungry animals. They are weapons of mass destruction." "But look at the pattern," Jake said, pulling up the star charts on the big screen. "They are not just randomly attacking things. They are moving in a specific way, like they are looking for something." Most of the council members were not interested in hearing more from the human. They went back to their arguments about military solutions and evacuation plans. But a few aliens stayed to listen to Jake's idea. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was one of them. She was a human scientist who worked on the research ship Endeavor. She had been studying the dragons for days, trying to understand their behavior. "Jake might be on to something," Elena said to the small group that had gathered around them. "I have been watching the dragons closely. They do not just eat everything they find. They taste it first, and then they either eat it completely or throw it away." A tall, thin alien with silver skin nodded. "I have seen this too. The dragons grab our ships, examine them for a few minutes, and then either destroy them or just push them away." Jake felt excited that someone was finally listening. "Exactly, they are not trying to hurt anyone. They are just looking for food that they cannot find." Captain Lisa Chun, Jake's friend and fellow pilot, had been doing her own research. She had been reading old books and records from the archive world of Scriptus Prime, looking for any mention of the dragons. "I found something interesting," Lisa said, showing them her tablet. "These ancient texts mention the dragons, but not as destroyers. They call them the guardians of the stellar gardens." Elena leaned forward to look at the old writings. "Stellar gardens? What are those?" "The texts are not very clear," Lisa admitted. But from what I can understand, the stellar gardens were some kind of living space systems. They existed millions of years ago, before most of our civilizations even began. Jake studied the ancient pictures on Lisa's tablet. They show beautiful, glowing networks of light that stretched between stars. Living worlds that seemed to be made of pure energy and light. The dragons were not destroyers, Lisa continued. They were gardeners. They took care of these living space systems, but something happened to the stellar gardens. They died out and the dragons went to sleep. And now they have woken up, Jake said, understanding flooding through him. They are looking for their gardens, but the gardens are gone. So they are just flying around, hungry and confused. Dr. Elena Rodriguez got very excited. That makes perfect sense. The dragons are not eating because they want to destroy things. They are eating because they are starving. They have been asleep for thousands of years and they woke up expecting to find their usual food. The small group of aliens who had been listening began to understand. The dragons were not evil monsters. They were just very big, very hungry animals who could not find the food they were used to eating, but General Voss was not convinced. Even if this is true, he said, what can we do about it? These stellar gardens are gone. We cannot bring them back. Jake had been thinking about this problem. Maybe we do not need to bring back the exact same food, he said. Maybe we just need to find something that the dragons will like just as much. And what would that be? Commander Voss asked with doubt in his voice. Jake looked around at his small group of supporters. I think we need to try Earth food. The aliens looked confused. Earth food? Elena asked. Jake, these dragons are the size of moons. How much Earth food do you think it would take to feed even one of them? Not regular Earth food? Jake explained. I mean human cooking. The way humans prepare food. The idea seemed crazy, but Jake kept talking. Think about it. Every other species in the galaxy eats the same things their ancestors ate. But humans are different. We take things from all over our planet and mix them together in new ways. We cook. Lisa began to see what Jake was thinking. Other species eat for energy and nutrition, but humans eat for pleasure. We make food taste. Good, exactly, Jake said. We are the only species that turned eating into an art form. We take simple ingredients and make them into something completely new and wonderful. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was getting excited again. The stellar gardens might have been like that too. Not just simple food, but complex energy systems with many different parts working together. Jake nodded. If the dragons are used to eating something complex and beautiful, maybe they need something that is prepared with care and skill, not just any food, but food that has been made with love. The group was quiet for a moment, thinking about this idea. It was strange to think that the solution to the galaxy's biggest crisis might be cooking, but then another star system fell to the dragons. The news came over the communication system like a cold wind. Another billion lives were gone? We have to try something, Lisa said quietly. The military solutions are not working. Maybe Jake is right, Elena agreed. The dragons are not going to stop being hungry. If we can figure out how to feed them properly, maybe they will stop destroying everything. Jake took a deep breath. I want to try to cook for them. I want to make them a meal and see if they will eat it instead of eating our colonies. General Voss laughed, but it was not a happy laugh. You want to cook for creatures that are the size of moons? Human, do you understand how impossible that sounds? I know it sounds impossible, Jake said. But I also know that everything else we have tried has failed. What do we have to lose? The question hung in the air. The dragons were already destroying everything in their path. The greatest military forces in the galaxy could not stop them. Maybe it was time to try something completely different. Elena put her hand on Jake's shoulder. If we are going to try this, we need to be smart about it. We need to understand what the dragons really need, Jake nodded. Then let's figure out how to cook for dragons. Getting permission to try Jake's plan was not easy. Many of the council members thought it was too dangerous. They worried that bringing a human ship close to the dragons would just give the creatures another meal. you want to fly directly toward. The most dangerous beings in the galaxy with a ship full of food? Ambassador Krell asked. This is not bravery, human. This is madness. But Jake had support from some unexpected places. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had been working day and night, studying everything she could find about the dragons and the ancient stellar gardens. She had put together a scientific report that made Jake's idea sound less crazy. The dragons are not acting like destroyers, Elena explained to the council. They are acting like confused, hungry animals. Every single attack follows the same pattern. They grab something, examine it, taste it, and then either eat it or throw it away in apparent disgust. Lisa Chun had found more ancient texts that supported their theory. The old writings described the dragons as gentle creatures who cared for the stellar gardens like farmers care for their crops. They were never meant to be destroyers. Dr. Marcus Webb, the head scientist on the human research ship, had been working on the technical side of the problem. If we are going to try this, we need to understand what kind of food the dragons actually need, he said. Marcus had been studying the energy patterns of the destroyed stellar gardens. The gardens were not just living things. They were complex energy systems that could turn starlight into nutrients. The dragons evolved to eat that kind of complex, high-energy food. So we need to create something similar, Jake said. Something that has the same kind of complexity and energy that the stellar gardens had, Marcus nodded. But how do we do that? We cannot recreate an entire stellar ecosystem in a kitchen. Jake had been thinking about this problem for days. We do not need to recreate the gardens exactly. We just need to create something that has the same kind of complexity and variety. What do you mean? Elena asked. Human cooking, Jake said. Think about it. When humans cook, we take simple ingredients and combine them in millions of different ways. We create flavors and textures that never existed in nature. We make food that is more complex and interesting than anything you can find growing wild. Lisa understood immediately. Other species eat what they evolved to eat, but humans eat everything. We took plants and animals from all over Earth and figured out how to make them work together. We are the only species that makes food taste better than it naturally does, Jake continued. We do not just eat for nutrition. We eat for pleasure. We make eating into an art. The idea was starting to make sense to more people. If the dragons were used to eating something as complex as the stellar gardens, maybe they would be interested in human cooking, which was the most complex food preparation in the galaxy, but there were still many problems to solve. The biggest problem was size. The dragons were huge. How could they cook enough food to satisfy a creature the size of a moon? We do not need to fill them up completely, Jake realized. We just need to give them something that tastes like what they are looking for. If we can make them happy with a small amount of the right food, maybe they will stop looking for more. After 3 days of debate, the council finally agreed to let Jake try his plan. But they gave him strict rules. He could only take a small, fast ship. If the dragons attacked, he had to run away immediately. And he could only approach one dragon at a time. Jake chose his ship carefully. He picked a small cargo vessel called the Comfort Food and had it fitted with the best kitchen equipment they could find. Marcus and Elena helped him plan what to cook. We need to make something that represents the best of human cooking, Elena said. Something that shows how complex and varied our food can be. Jake decided to start with soup. Not just any soup, but a soup that combined ingredients and techniques from all over Earth. He would use Italian herbs, Asian spices, African grains, and American cooking methods, all mixed together into something completely new. Soup is perfect, Marcus agreed. It allows us to combine many different flavors and textures into one dish. And the smell will travel through space, so the dragon will be able to detect it from far away. The kitchen on the Comfort Food was small but well equipped. Jake loaded it with ingredients from dozens of different planets. He had spices from the desert worlds, vegetables from the garden planets, and proteins from the farming colonies. As Jake prepared for his mission, word spread throughout the galaxy. Some people thought he was a hero. Others thought he was crazy. But everyone was watching to see what would happen. The dragon Jake chose to approach was circling the ruins of a mining colony. It had been there for 3 days, seemingly frustrated that it could not find what it was looking for among the destroyed buildings. As the comfort food flew toward the dragon, Jake could see how truly massive it was. The creature was beautiful in a terrifying way. Its scales changed color from deep purple to bright silver as it moved. Its wings created patterns of light in the space dust around it. "Dragon in sight," Jake reported to the council observers, who were watching from a safe distance. "It is definitely aware of my ship." The dragon turned its enormous head toward the approaching vessel. Instead of attacking immediately, it just watched. Its eyes, which burned like small suns, seemed curious rather than angry. "I'm starting to cook," Jake announced. "Elena, you said they analyze everything they encounter by smell and taste, right?" "That is correct." Elena's voice came over the radio. "They seem to examine the molecular structure of everything they find." "Then let's give them something worth examining," Jake said. Jake began to cook with more care and skill than he had ever used before. He was not just making food. He was creating something that might save the galaxy. He started with his soup base, carefully combining flavors that had never been mixed together before. The dragon moved closer to the ship. Its massive nostrils flared as it detected the smells coming from the kitchen. For the first time since the crisis began, a dragon stopped its restless searching and focused on one thing. Jake added layer after layer of complexity to his cooking. He used techniques from every culture on Earth, creating combinations that were entirely new. The kitchen filled with amazing smells that somehow managed to escape the ship and drift through space. "Jake," Elena's voice was excited, "the dragon's behavior is changing. It is not showing any signs of aggression. It actually looks ... interested." The dragon had stopped moving completely. It hovered near the ship, its great head tilted as if it was trying to understand what it was smelling. Its eyes, which had burned with what looked like anger and frustration, now glowed with something that might have been hope. Jake continued cooking, adding more and more complexity to his meal. He was creating something that had never existed before, a fusion of every human culinary tradition made with ingredients from across the galaxy. The dragon waited patiently while Jake worked. It did not attack. It did not move away. It simply waited, as if it somehow understood that something special was being prepared just for it. Jake's hands shook as he put the finishing touches on his creation. Through the kitchen window, he could see the dragon floating just outside his ship. The massive creature had not moved for over an hour, waiting patiently while Jake cooked. The dragon's energy readings are unlike anything we have seen before, Dr. Elena Rodriguez reported from the observation ship. "It is not showing any signs of aggression or hunger. It seems to be ... anticipating something." Jake wiped sweat from his forehead. The kitchen was hot from all the cooking, but he felt good about what he had made. The soup was perfect, a combination of flavors from across Earth and beyond. He had also prepared bread using ancient techniques, roasted vegetables with spices from 12 different worlds, and a protein dish that mixed the best of human barbecue with ingredients that had never been combined before. "Okay," Jake said into his radio. "I think I am ready to serve dinner." He carefully moved his creation to the ship's airlock. The meal was contained in a special container that would protect it in space while allowing the smells to escape. Jake said a quiet prayer to whatever gods might be listening and opened the airlock. The container drifted slowly toward the dragon. The creature watched it approach with what looked like intense interest. When the container was close enough, the dragon gently reached out with one massive claw and drew it closer. What happened next amazed everyone who was watching. The dragon did not grab the food and swallow it quickly like it had done with everything else. Instead, it held the container carefully and examined it with incredible gentleness. "It is not eating yet," Jake reported. "It is looking at the food very carefully." The dragon brought the container close to its massive nostrils and breathed in deeply. Jake could see the creature's eyes close as it took in the smells. For a moment, the dragon looked almost peaceful. Then, slowly and carefully, the dragon began to eat. It did not devour the food like a hungry animal. It tasted each part of the meal separately, savoring the different flavors and textures. The dragon ate Jake's soup first, and as it did, its scales began to change color. The angry red glow faded away, replaced by soft blues and greens. Jake. Elena's voice was filled with wonder. The dragon's entire biosignature is changing. It is not just eating your food, it is enjoying it. The dragon continued eating, taking its time with each bite. When it tasted the bread, it made a sound that was almost like a purr. The roasted vegetables made it close its eyes in what looked like bliss. And when it tried the protein dish, the dragon's wings spread wide in what could only be described as joy. "I cannot believe what I am seeing," Commander Voss said over the radio. "The most dangerous creature in the galaxy is acting like a happy pet." But Jake was not done yet. He had prepared dessert. "Dragon," Jake said, speaking directly to the creature, even though he did not know if it could understand him. "I made something special for you." The dessert was Jake's masterpiece. It was a combination of sweet and savory flavors that had never been tried before. He had used fruits from the Paradise Worlds, sweeteners from the crystal caves of Andromeda, and spices that created flavors that seemed to change as you tasted them. When the dragon tried the dessert, something magical happened. The creature's eyes began to glow with a warm, golden light. Its scales shimmered with colors that Jake had never seen before. The dragon made a sound that was part song and part sigh of contentment. "Jake," Elena's voice was barely above a whisper. "You did it, you actually did it." But the most amazing thing was yet to come. As the dragon finished eating, it began to move in a way that was completely different from before. Instead of the angry, searching movements that had terrified the galaxy, the dragon now moved with grace and purpose. The dragon began to work. It gathered space dust and cosmic debris, shaping them with its claws and breath. Where before there had been empty space, the dragon was creating something beautiful. It was building. "What is it doing?" Jake asked. Dr. Marcus Webb was studying the readings from his instruments. "It is creating some kind of energy matrix. The dragon is arranging matter and energy in complex patterns." As they watched, the dragon built what looked like a garden in space. It was made of light and energy, with flowing patterns that looked almost alive. The creation was beautiful beyond words. "It is making a stellar garden," Lisa Shun said with awe in her voice. "The dragon is rebuilding what was lost." The dragon worked for hours, creating its garden with the same care and attention that Jake had put into his cooking. When it was finished, the dragon turned back toward Jake's ship. For a moment, Jake was afraid. The dragon was so massive and powerful, but then he saw the look in the creature's eyes. It was not anger or hunger. It was gratitude. The dragon bowed its great head toward the comfort food. It was saying thank you. "Jake," Elena said, her voice filled with excitement. "You need to see this. The dragon is not the only one responding to your cooking." Jake looked at his instruments and saw something that made his heart race. More dragons were coming. Not just one or two, but dozens of them. They were converging on his location from all across the galaxy. "Are they coming to attack?" Jake asked, suddenly worried. "No," Elena said. "They are coming to be fed. Word has spread somehow. All the dragons in the galaxy know that someone finally understands what they need." The first dragon to arrive was smaller than the one Jake had fed. It approached slowly, and politely as if it was waiting in line at a restaurant. Behind it came another, and another. Jake realized that he was about to become the busiest chef in the galaxy. But he was not worried. He was excited. Each dragon, he discovered, had slightly different preferences. Some liked spicy food, others preferred sweet flavors. A few enjoyed simple, hearty meals that reminded them of something they had lost long ago. "I'm going to need help," Jake said into his radio, "and a lot more ingredients." Within hours, ships began arriving from across the galaxy. Human cooks volunteered to help feed the dragons. Supply ships brought ingredients from every world in known space. The area around Jake's ship became the strangest restaurant in the universe. The dragons waited patiently for their turns to be fed. They did not fight or argue. They simply waited like civilized customers in a fine dining establishment. And after each dragon was fed, it would create its own stellar garden, filling the empty spaces of the galaxy with beauty and life. Jake stood in his kitchen, surrounded by the best chefs that humanity had to offer, cooking for creatures that had once been the most feared beings in the galaxy. He smiled as he watched the dragons through his window, now peaceful and content. "You know," he said to Elena, who had come aboard to help with the cooking, "I think we might have just started." "Something amazing," Elena smiled back. "I think you are right, Jake. I think you are absolutely right." 6 months after Jake Morrison fed the first dragon, the galaxy was a completely different place. The news of what had happened spread faster than light itself. Every species in known space had heard the story of the human who stopped the dragon. Crisis with nothing but good cooking. The Galactic Council had called an emergency meeting. But this time it was not because of a crisis. It was because they needed to figure out how to handle the most wonderful problem they had ever faced. "The dragons are not just peaceful now," Ambassador Krell reported to the assembled council members. "They are actively helping to rebuild everything they destroyed. They have created over 200 new stellar gardens in the past month alone. The gardens were more beautiful than anyone had imagined. Each one was different, created by a dragon who had been fed a meal that matched its own personality. Some gardens were bright and energetic, filled with swirling colors and dancing lights. Others were calm and peaceful, with gentle patterns that seemed to sing soft melodies. But the most amazing thing was how the gardens affected the space around them. Planets that had been dead and lifeless began to bloom with new forms of life. Solar systems that had been empty for millions of years suddenly had asteroid belts full of rare minerals. The dragons were not just creating gardens, they were healing the galaxy. Jake found himself at the center of all this change. He had been promoted from cargo pilot to director of interspecies culinary relations, a job title that had never existed. Before, he split his time between feeding dragons and teaching other beings how to cook. "The key is not just the ingredients," Jake explained to a group of young Zephyrian chefs. "It is the care and love you put into the cooking. Food tastes better when it is made with happiness." The cooking lessons had become incredibly popular. Beings from all over the galaxy came to learn from the humans who had solved the dragon crisis. The Nexari, who had never eaten anything but energy bars, discovered the joy of fresh vegetables. The ethereal communion learned to make soups that could be tasted with the mind as well as the mouth. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had become the galaxy's leading expert on dragon psychology. She had discovered that each dragon had its own personality and preferences, just like people did. "Dragon number 47 prefers spicy food," Elena told Jake as they planned the day's meals. "But dragon number 12 only likes sweet things. And dragon number 23 has become obsessed with human pizza." Jake laughed. "Pizza-loving dragons. I never thought I would live to see that." The dragon that loved pizza had actually learned to make its own. It would carefully arrange toppings on massive, floating disks of energy and then breathe gently on them to cook them. The result was pizza that was the size of a small moon and tasted like nothing else in the universe. Captain Lisa Chun had become the head of the new Dragon Communication Project. She had discovered that dragons could understand human language, much better than anyone had expected. They just had never had any reason to talk to other species before. "They are incredibly intelligent," Lisa reported to the council. "They have been watching our civilizations grow for millions of years. They know more about galactic history than our best historians." The dragons had started sharing their knowledge with the younger species. They taught the Zephyrians how to build better spaceships. They showed the Nexari how to create energy sources that would never run out. They even helped the humans develop new farming techniques that could grow food in the harsh conditions of space. But the most important thing the dragons taught was about taking care of living things. The stellar gardens were not just beautiful decorations. They were complex ecosystems that supported thousands of different forms of life. The dragons were master gardeners who understood how to make life flourish in the most unlikely places. "We have been thinking about space all wrong," Dr. Marcus Webb explained to a group of scientists. "We thought it was empty and dead. But the dragons have shown us that space can be alive and growing. We just need to know how to plant the right seeds." The changes were not just happening in space. On planets all across the galaxy, new restaurants were opening. Beings who had never thought about food as anything more than fuel were discovering the joy of eating well. Dinner parties became popular. Cooking shows started appearing on communication networks. The galaxy was learning to enjoy food. Jake opened his interstellar culinary academy on a space station that orbited Earth. Students came from hundreds of different worlds to learn the art of cooking. The academy had kitchens designed for every type of being imaginable, from creatures that breathed methane to energy beings that had never needed to eat physical food before. "Cooking is not just about feeding the body," Jake told his students during the opening ceremony. "It is about feeding the soul. It is about bringing people together and making them happy." The Academy's most famous student was a young dragon named Ember. She was the first dragon to actually enroll in cooking classes, and she had become incredibly skilled at making desserts. Her specialty was starfruit tarts that glowed with their own light and tasted like concentrated happiness. "Ember makes the best desserts in the galaxy," Jake told Elena as they watched the young dragon carefully decorating a cake that was the size of a building. "She has a natural talent for making things that taste like joy." The dragons had also started their own schools. They taught other species how to grow stellar gardens and how to take care of the complex ecosystems that existed in space. Children from all over the galaxy came to learn from the dragons, and the dragons loved teaching them. "The young ones learn so quickly," said the dragon that had been the first to taste Jake's cooking. Its name was Cosmos, and it had become something like the leader of all the dragons. "They understand that caring for life is the most important thing in the universe." The relationship between dragons and the other species had become so close that some dragons had started living near populated planets. They would help with farming, weather control, and even transportation. Children would ride on the backs of friendly dragons, soaring through space to visit friends on other worlds. The Galactic Council had to create entirely new laws to deal with the changes. There were now regulations about stellar garden maintenance, dragon feeding schedules, and interspecies cooking competitions. The council chamber had been redesigned to include a special area where dragons could participate in meetings. Never, in my wildest dreams, did I think I would be writing laws about dragon restaurant inspections, Ambassador Krell said during one council session. "But here we are, and I have never been happier about being wrong." The economic changes were just as dramatic as the social ones. The galaxy's economy had shifted from being based on mining and manufacturing to being based on food production and hospitality. Worlds that had been poor because they had no valuable minerals suddenly became rich because they could grow exotic spices or raise unusual animals. Earth became one of the most important planets in the galaxy, not because of its military power or technology, but because of its food. Human farmers worked with alien scientists to develop new crops that could grow in the conditions on other worlds. Human chefs traveled to distant planets to teach local beings how to cook their native foods in new and exciting ways. Jake often visited Earth to check on the new farms and cooking schools. He was amazed by how much his home planet had changed. Cities that had once been focused on industry were now focused on agriculture and culinary arts. The most popular career choice among young people was becoming a chef or a farmer. "My grandmother used to say that the way to a person's heart is through their stomach," Jake told a group of reporters during one visit to Earth. "I guess that works for dragons, too." The dragons had also started creating art. Their stellar gardens were not just functional ecosystems. They were masterpieces of beauty and creativity. Some dragons specialized in gardens that created music, with energy patterns that produced sounds as they moved. Others created gardens that told stories, with patterns of light that showed the history of the galaxy. One dragon named Aurora had become famous for creating gardens that looked like giant flowers. Each one was different, with petals made of colored energy that shifted and changed as solar winds blew through them. Tourists came from all over the galaxy to see Aurora's flower gardens. "The dragons are artists," Elena explained to Jake as they watched Aurora work on her latest creation. "They always were." The original stellar gardens were not just food sources, they were works of art. The dragons are finally able to create. Again, the friendship between humans and dragons had become especially strong. Dragons seemed to understand human emotions better than most other species did. They could sense when someone was sad or worried, and they would often try to help by creating small, beautiful things or by sharing their ancient wisdom. Jake had become personally close to several dragons. Cosmos often visited him at the academy, and they would spend hours talking about cooking and life. The dragon had a deep understanding of flavors and had helped Jake develop new recipes that were popular across the galaxy. "You taught us that there is more to life than just surviving," Cosmos told Jake during one of their conversations. "You showed us that life can be beautiful and joyful and full of wonderful tastes." The academy had grown,